So please give him a hand.
Thanks everyone. Just get used to mic. So just first maybe show of hands. Who knows Shuttle? Who here has heard or maybe knows what it does? That's a good number of people. That's good to know. So first of all, thanks everyone for coming. It's really exciting to have so many people, and we're, the whole team of Shuttle, all but a couple people are here visiting. We're actually remote, so people came from all over the world to partly for this event, but also partly for our company offsite. So I want to maybe a round of applause for the team. So the way I wanted to do this is quite informal actually. I didn't even want to have slides because I wanted to have it more conversational. And so I'm going to invite everyone to ask questions. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll try to keep it informal. And what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about Shuttle for those of you who don't know about it. And then take you through a little bit of a backstory of where it started and how it went. It didn't actually start with Shuttle, like many products. It started in a different place, and so it's an interesting story. And also, I want to share, how Rust community, open source community more broadly as well, have been helpful in our journey, and how much we have learned from this journey. And maybe also tell you a little bit about what we are planning for the next 2 months, but also next 2 years, and be happy to answer any questions at the end. So let's dive in. First, what is Shuttle? Shuttle is reshaping cloud development, and the way we're doing this is by introducing a new framework, which we call lovingly infrastructure from code. Many of you are used to this idea of infrastructure as code and wondering what is infrastructure from code. Well, the idea there is, wouldn't it be great to do all of your development in one context, right? As you're creating an application, rather than switching between your editor, AWS console, provisioning infrastructure, wiring all of that infrastructure in your code, and constantly switching context here and there, writing Docker files, and etc. To rather have everything done in the same context while you're writing code, defining infrastructure straight from that code. And this is really what Shuttle is about, is the idea of provisioning infrastructure by simply reading your code, right? And the way we do this is we let developers add annotations to the code, and Shuttle as a platform at runtime reads those annotations and provisions all the infrastructure that's needed. So it uses that infrastructure, provisions it, wires it all up, and pretty much what you get is the best developer experience when it comes to deploying Rust. So for those of you who haven't tried, if you have any applications, side projects, or things that you've written in Rust that you're deploying somewhere else, you can really quickly give Shuttle a spin and see how amazing the development experience can be when it's powered by the features that Rust enables as a language. So we've been building a lot on top of what Rust has to offer as a language. And that has really enabled us to create this special developer experience, but also an amazing community that is starting to grow and form around this. Some people from this community are here today. Many will probably be watching the recording that Josh is making today. We have about 3,000 people now in our community. The Discord is literally exploding. We just finished something that we call Shuttle Batch, where we had an organized batch of contributors working with us for a couple months on different projects and issues for Shuttle, and that was quite exciting. We had a demo day today, and I'll talk about it a bit later. But this is just to say that community has been cornerstone of what we do, and we've been building Shuttle as a community. And so that's kind of the theme that you'll hear throughout this talk today. So maybe then just to rewind a little bit and go into the story of Shuttle. I'll start with my background. I didn't actually start in software. I started in finance. I studied economics, then started in finance, and I did a little bit of time in investment banking and private equity. And I didn't find that exciting. And my next job was actually at a hedge fund, which is where I met my co-founders, one of them here, Christos, and another Damien, and Juan. And that was a lot more fun, because really, it was called a hedge fund, but it was a software company, and we were building trading platform, and we were deploying some machine learning models to the cloud, and those machine learning models would send signals to the trading platform and trade them. I was a trader there, but I got to work a lot with software developers and data scientists, of which the company was mostly software developers and data scientists. And that was a really, really interesting and transforming experience for me, because all of a sudden, coming from finance where there's a lot of ego and sometimes not enough action, here, like, things actually happen and people don't have all that much ego about that. And that was a very nice shift. And I enjoyed working with people like that, and kind of started getting more and more into it. And really, we formed this little clique together, and then eventually ended up starting a company. Our goal was to build a global data exchange because we wanted to make data a commodity. I'm sure many people have tried this in the past, but so the exciting part of this was that we actually made the decision to start something together, and somehow on this journey it has transformed into where we are now. And the pivots that happened along the way really were, essential part of the experience. So initially we went with this big problem. From that really big problem, we nailed down a smaller subset of problem, which was data privacy, because we thought to build a global data exchange, you need to address data privacy. And we ended up building a privacy-aware query engine, which we realized that not that many people in the world need a query engine. And that was a fun learning experience for us. But really what it taught us was that you want to start from the problem, right? You want to start from what do people actually need, and what are people in the world doing right now, and where can we add value there. Whereas what we did in the beginning is just take exciting technology and try to build something out of that, and then see if that solution can find a problem, which is, in tech called solution in search of problem. So we realized that relatively quickly. I think one of the helping factors there was getting into Y Combinator, and some of the partners there explicitly telling us, guys, you're a CISP. So that was like brutal feedback, but it was much needed. And for us, I think what was really important though is the choice of Rust at that time. Even though we didn't know what we were doing, you probably still don't know what we're doing. Most people are just winging it. But what I would say is choosing Rust was a really pivotal decision for us, and we didn't realize how important it would be down the line. For us, it was about, okay, we went from the world of finance where we had to deal with Java and Python and things crashing all the time. We wanted something that would have an amazing developer experience, right? And our co-founder Damien was quite adamant on choosing Rust. I think he was in that quite similar to Luca, who was doing the Code Dojo recently, who was pushing TrueLayer towards Rust back in the day as well. And so that was back in 2019. So right now Rust, I would say, is in a lot better place than it was back then. So it was a relatively big risk that we took, but we never looked back really. And coming back to that notion of community, starting to use Rust was not just using a certain language for coding, right, and for building a product, but it was becoming part of a community, right, and community that is growing and that has grown so much and transformed. And to an extent, we have seen ourselves as a company grow alongside Rust. And when the time came, actually, so few pivots later, we ended up being a company called Synth, which was a data generator, private data generator or synthetic data generator. That was a developer tool, an open source developer tool that did pretty well. I think it has about 1,000 stars. It still has a life of its own, a community of its own. We kind of handed it over to some people when we started on Shuttle. But what we found with Synth is that a lot of people were using this data generation tool, which we thought was for privacy, for masking data and for anonymizing data. They were using it to test their backends or to test their front ends. And so we got really curious, like, why is the use is not what we intended it to be? And we started talking to a lot of people and uncovering the horror stories of how people deal with development, specifically backend development, the horror stories from CI/CD, all over the place, how people do testing, and it got us thinking that things can really be done much better, right? And for that, we need to really rethink something, and something has to be rethought, and that was the step that we took when we decided to work on Shuttle. It was going from kind of relatively small risk venture that we were back then to something that is going to reshape how development is done potentially in the future. And that was like an exciting shift. By that time, we were already a few years into our Rust journey. And we've built the connections in the Rust community that have helped us to really take Shuttle very quickly from 0 to 1, let's say. And I would say that was essential as well. And again, coming back to this power of community, we just had a POC pretty much. Shuttle wasn't even in open alpha then. It was kind of closed alpha. We selected 5 people initially, and these 5 people ended up telling 20 more people. And very quickly, it became something that we hit 1,000 stars, I think, within a few months, and then kept going quickly. That was something that enabled us to move much quicker than we would have been able to otherwise. Having that community support you, knowing people in that community, right? Getting their opinion, and this is a very supportive community. You guys are here, supporting us and supporting each other, and that's amazing to see. And I think that's really beautiful part of being Rustaceans, I guess. That you get this community feel. So and that enabled us to raise quite quickly. Like after probably less than a year of going with Shuttle, we managed to raise our seed round. It was towards the end of last year, and that gave us the opportunity to keep building, or mandate, I would say, to keep building more and more quickly, to hire some people, to get some help, and that's that is really a beginning of, let's say, next step of the journey that we're going through right now. And since then, many things have been happening. We have tried to focus on let's say not only different ways that we can improve infrastructure from code experience, that we can kind of address the POC, let's say, shortcuts that we have made, right? So to get this more of a production-ready feel, so that people not only can have amazing experience with Rust, right? Amazing experience of deploying Rust applications and Rust backends, but we can cover as many use cases as possible, that we can, address some of the paper cuts that people have. And kind of collectively, we've been calling this going into beta, right? Even though beta can mean pretty much anything for a company, there's not really a set definition of what beta is. But yeah, this is the week that marks Shuttle going into beta. It's very exciting times. Maybe a round of applause. Yeah, you should, we'll share some information about this, but you should stay tuned. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming. We have a lot of exciting initiatives that we've started along the way, because part of our mission is not just like making Rust experience amazing for Rust developers, but it's making it amazing for all developers, right? And for how to bring more people's attention towards Rust, how to make the equation of what language should I develop with, skewed towards, okay, Rust makes sense, right? And we started seeing ourselves as kind of evangelists for Rust as well. We started this newsletter which we call Shuttle Launchpad, which pretty much takes people through a specific Rust lesson with every issue, and builds it up towards a really complete knowledge of Rust. And so that has just started a few weeks ago, and probably going to go for, we already have, I think, over 30 or 40 issues planned, and then I think after that, we're going to have a lot more as well. So there are many other initiatives that we do, like workshops and hackathons that are planned as well. And as part of beta, we're going to be releasing some of the more specific dates and plans for what we have coming. So that's us now. I think what I really wanted to talk about as well is what are we thinking about in terms of Shuttle roadmap, and what are the things that we have planned in the next few months. We have seen people struggle a lot in the world of cloud platforms with transparency of billing, and we have seen how sometimes figuring out if if you're building an application and figuring out how much your infrastructure is going to cost you can be quite a daunting experience, and there's not an awful lot of transparency in that. And what we're trying to see is how can we create the most transparent experience for people, where pretty much every action that you take, you get an estimate of how much this is going to cost you, right? And have as much introspection into that as possible. The reason that we want to do this, because we don't fundamentally see ourselves as an infrastructure provider. What we see ourselves more as is developer experience platform. And the difference is that, in terms of providing infrastructure to developers and to companies, competing with the big guys like AWS and Google and Microsoft is probably not gonna be feasible in the long run. There's a lot of money being invested into this, and kind of trying to optimize something there is probably not the best use of our time. But what we can be really good at is understanding what developer needs are, talking to people, and kind of figuring out what are those things that developers need and want, and building them quickly because we're not as tied by the legacy infrastructure. legacy stuff. So that's that's the distinction, and what we want to see in the future is potentially people deploying to their own AWS accounts, their own Azure accounts, GCP accounts, and Shuttle being the kind of the infrastructure management layer on top of that. And in that sense, it makes sense for us to also then try and help people have more transparency into billing. So that's one of the things that we really want to address. Of course, we did recently a launch of like a small project, a moonshot project, which we call Shuttle AI. But really, the idea is like, how can you use large language models to augment development experience when it comes to kind of full life cycle of development, not just writing code, right, but actually deploying that code and having it run in the cloud. So that for Shuttle AI, what this was is pretty much a way for you to give a prompt to Shuttle, and the whole application will be built for you and deployed. So it's not just kind of building the code, but you say like, build me a Twitter clone, or build me like and I think actually at some point later today we will do a small demo of this. But there are so many exciting ways that LLMs can be used in this specific space, right? Developer tools, infrastructure. We can use it for optimizing, the efficiency, for making it, better from cost perspective, and for many other things, really, for just making developers more productive while building this, maybe avoiding writing boilerplate there, or just, simply another way that we're thinking about, just shutlifying your application. Imagine an application that you have that's hosted, I don't know, on Heroku. You just, kind of run cargo shuttle shutlify, and have your application hosted in Shuttle just from that. So I think that's the different directions that we're looking at. There's definitely going to be some more stuff happening in this and next quarter on this. More potentially integrations with IDE. We have seen like most people using VS Code, so there's definitely some interesting things that can be done with extensions there. And another thing that we may talk about later today is our very own cloud framework, and really finding ways to build a framework that has all the batteries included, right? And I think that there's been a lot of talk about this in the space, and we really see Shuttle, as a platform, of course, but framework in the first place. And so there's definitely going to be more of stuff in that. We want the framework to be to compile into WASM, and that will give us a lot of nice benefits. And we have seen a lot of interest as well in our community for that. People really get excited when we talk about, we call it, right now the project is called Shuttle Next. We invite everyone to give suggestions for other names. We have admittedly not always been good with names. I'm not going to mention the names of all the previous products that we worked on. But yeah, so this is just some of the things that we're thinking about. There's definitely a lot. Yeah. Exactly. There's a lot of other cool features. I mean, I don't want to take all the time talking about this, but maybe the last thing that I want to kind of dwell on for a little bit is some of the, well, it's probably the most important lesson that we've learned along the way, and it's about the your mission and the values that are important to you. I think what's really easy to do is to get distracted we live in a really noisy world, and we have definitely been kind of victim of trying to chase like the latest hype or something that seems exciting from the beginning, but really more and more as we keep building Shuttle, we realize that what's important is to stay true to your mission. We have we have embraced that mission ever since we started Shuttle, which is empowering developers, and I think coming back to that and bringing yourself back to that and aligning the values with that is really important. I've spent a lot of time thinking myself, as we're now growing the team and we have more members, and not just full-time, we have people working part-time. I think in total there's like close to 15 people now working on Shuttle. And having thought a lot about values, I've realized that initially it was something that I thought you talk about, values, we need to get together, we talk about them and we say like, this is our values and this is it. But the more I realize it's actually, values are what you do and not what you say. And this is what we are trying to adhere to. This is what I've kind of also seen a lot in our community, which is you want to foster things by example, right? And by showing what you're about. So in Shuttle we take this quite close to heart, what we believe in, the values, and for most of this retreat so far, we have enjoyed discussing, and it's only been one full day that we've worked together, but we've spent a lot of time talking about this and how much this has meant to us. So yeah, this is just something that's been very close to our journey, and why I think we have been as successful as we have been, really embracing what we're about and going full in on this. I'm very excited about the journey ahead. There's so many things that we want to build. We want to build together with the community, with our team, and I want to thank everyone who's here, but also like everyone who has helped us along our journey. There's been so many people, including our investors, but also just contributors. Some of them might be watching this, and really looking forward to seeing what Shuttle will become. And thanks everyone.